Well, here we have a question from Sister Mera who has suffered a great problem. Let's see what it says. Good afternoon. Blessings to you and your family. I am a person who always seeks to be in good standing with God. I don't like to harm anyone. But my son had an accident. He was 19 years old. He fell and he had brain death. He was an excellent young man and loved God. He never caused a problem. Now he asked me, what did I do wrong for God to punish me in that way? I feel that God has abandoned me. I feel very alone. I can't understand. Well, first of all, dear and beloved sister, hearing about that accident also affected us emotionally. And we, in that pain, in that sadness, we accompany you. May God give you much patience and many blessings. Yes, it is very painful for me too. Hearing it is painful. How does it feel? I hope that doesn't happen to anyone. But let's see, dear sister, where are we? And in what situation? If we know where we are, we can interpret what happens to us. We are in the world of trials. We are not in paradise. Many times our worldview, our perspective towards the material world, is a completely false and mistaken view. That is why we come to this conclusion, that God has abandoned me. Let's see. You have mental principles, mental precepts that are wrong. Like many who say they are believers but believe in the wrong things. A simple example. Many think that the material world has to be perfect and has to be like paradise. So, since you think it has to be paradise here, what happens in paradise? Everything is pleasure, everything is joy, everything is calm, no affliction, earthquake, storm, nothing. Nothing that can disturb us happens in paradise. So, many think that when they say, I am a believer, that one word is enough. And God says to him, very well, since you have told me that you are a believer, now you will win, and I will be your protector. It's how God is going to be. What is it called? Your servant. Many believers think that God is their servant. They are the masters. I, as a believer, command God, order God. God, like a slave, obeys me. But that is not how it is. Neither the material world is paradise, nor is God our slave to obey us. So, because we had that vision, we interpreted it wrong. One thing that happens, for example, is an accident. Because you said, here we are in paradise, I am a believer, which means I am the master of God. God, like a slave, like the genie of the lamp, has to obey me. I did not allow that genie from the lamp to take my son. But now God is betraying me because that accident happened to my son. So, it is God's fault. So that's it. We are going to reach very wrong conclusions that God has abandoned me, God doesn't love me, etc. We are going to go back step by step, correcting everything we have said before. First, what does faith mean? You have described it to me as loving God and not harming your neighbor. What else? Is that faith? No, that is not faith. That is to begin with faith. If you love God, then you have to love the teachings of God. Faith means a commitment that comes from knowledge, from the recognition of the existence of God. If God is wise, He has a plan for you. What is God's plan on earth? If you are truly a believing person, then you have to be a seeker of the truth. God has a plan for you. Where is that plan? It is religion. What is that religion? The unique religion, the religion sent by all the prophets. Worship God, serve your neighbor, reject Satan. How to do it? That plan is called the practice of religion. God has a plan for us that encompasses all aspects of life. That religion is called giving your heart to God. In that covenant, you will be a servant of God and God will be your master. God commands you and you obey. Then God, like a good coach, puts difficulties in your way to purify you, to perfect you, like a football coach. The football coach is not a hotel buddy to serve you water, food, or to let you rest better. That world is not a five-star hotel. It is a field of struggle, of hard training. A good coach doesn't tell you, go rest now. Although from time to time, they allow you to take a little break to regain your energy to return to the fight. But that life is a struggle, an eternal struggle between good and evil, between our ego and obedience to God. We choose between ego or blindness, or we will follow God. So, first, on that path, we need to know the truth. What is the path of God? It cannot be so many controversial paths. It has to be a clear path. So you have to start studying which is the correct religion. If you have not started down that path, you cannot say that you are a good believer because you have ignored God's norms. You have ignored God in your daily life. You cannot say, I am a believer, but I do not care about what God has commanded me. Why? For example, a Muslim says, God has commanded you to get up every morning before sunrise and perform the prayer. If that is true, as Muslims do and want, then if you fail to do it, you are not a good believer. You are disrespecting God who has commanded you things. So, we need to investigate to what extent is that Islam true? To what extent is what the Quran is and all that true? Is it false or is it true? It needs to be investigated. So that is the first step. The second step is to understand that God is a coach. God is Rab. Rab means that He puts obstacles in your way. To perfect yourself, to purify yourself, we need obstacles. The Holy Quran undoubtedly states clearly in Surah Al-Ankabut, verse 2 and verse 3, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and it is said that it is very clear what it says indeed. Do people think or assume that we let go when they are going to say that we are believers? Are we not going to put them through difficult trials? When a person says, God, I want to make a pact with you, I want to be a football player, God says, very well, I am the professional coach. I will give you obstacles. You have to run, you have to jump, you have to fall, you have to learn. You have flaws. I will help you correct your defects. I will make you perfect with a hard struggle of training, sweating in life. God helps you with what? With illnesses, with difficulties, loss of loved ones, loss of capital, loss of many things that we want and love. Why? To make us detach from the material world. It's like you are like a big balloon, but with many weights attached to the material world. You have to detach yourself from the material to reach God. This is what happens to the prophet Abraham. Abraham says, God, I make a covenant with you, I obey you. God says, very well, go sacrifice your son. Oh God, this is madness. Go do it. Be quiet. Go do it. God commands him to sacrifice his son. How is that possible? Well, Abraham obeys. He brings the knife to the throat of his firstborn, who is Ishmael. What happens? Was the knife useless? What did it cut? Because everyone says the Bible, the Quran says that it did not slaughter him. So, what did it do to him? God, why did you make that trial? Is God crazy? No, God is the wisest. Why did God put that test on Abraham? You have to pass the knife and slaughter your son. But that knife did not slaughter the son. God knew it because he did it. That knife cut the thread of Abraham's dependence on the material. Because Abraham was crazy about the firstborn he had, he loved him. It is as if he was so attached to his son, so attached that he no longer allowed himself to see God. Not to detach from the material, he had to do it. Then, that knife cut, not the throat, but the thread of Abraham's heart. It cut his son. It was cut off. Very wise then was the order of God. The order of God was very wise. That will happen to every believer. When you say, God, I am a believer, God says, very well, go ahead. Here come the trials. Illnesses, difficulties come on, give it more, give it more, give it more. We are going to add lost loved ones and all that. So one says to me, very well, look, it's just that I don't want to enter that game. I don't want to be a believer so that God won't put me to the test, because those difficulties for the believer have two meanings. The first meaning is the purification of the believer for their perfection. Sometimes we have some faults, we have some sins, and we need to be purified. God helps us with difficulties, with bitterness, with the loss of loved ones, with a night of fever, with an illness, with whatever it may be. And it is also to give us perfection, which is to go through the patience that we will have in calamities. We continue on the path of God with patience despite all the difficulties. A person converted to Islam. On the same night that they converted to Islam, they were called and told, your mom has died. He said, my God, how many trials? Within a couple of weeks, they called him. They fired you from your job when they realized you converted to Islam. God, thank God. I am being put through many trials, right? God is putting me to the test to perfect myself. The day you put on the Islamic veil, God puts you to the test. You are cast out from all sides. Oh, what a difficult trial. God, I thought that when I put on the Islamic veil, you would be the genie of the lamp. This is wrong, sister. God is not the genie of the lamp. He is Rab. It will train you on the right path. So, for believers, this is it. A question. If we say we do not want these trials, will the trials end? No. That is the essence of the material world, where everyone is in competition. If one lives, it means another has died. To survive, you have to sacrifice animals. Such is material life. You eat a fruit, which means that seed had to become a plant, but you eat that seed. Do not allow that single tiny grain of wheat to become a wheat. You cut the circle of life of a seed, of a grain. This is how material life is. Have you never thought about it? When you take something, you are taking it away from others. When you marry a woman, it means that you no longer allow others to marry that girl. You are depriving that woman, and that girl cannot be with other men. You are depriving yourself. You are limiting yourself. It is very clear. It is the world of limitations. It is the material world. Well, one question. If a person says, I do not want to be a believer, and I do not want to enter that game, what will happen to me? Very well. When a person is within God's training, God is merciful. What does merciful mean? Merciful means, in that natural world of causes and consequences, that the merciful comes to protect you. For example, if I am in the natural world due to my own actions, I have to receive 100 consequences from my own actions. It is natural. It is the natural law. Cause-effect. When I become the believer, God will protect me from 95 out of 100 consequences. And the other 5 consequences will be arranged for my perfection. He is the wise and merciful coach. Yes, I do receive calamities, but fewer calamities of quality. A healthier life, more protected by God, it means that out of 100 calamities, I only receive 2 or 5. That is called the mercy of God. What about a person who does not want God? Very well. Then, they will surrender themselves into the hands of Satan. What does Satan do to you? It teaches you how to harm yourself, it will seduce you and make you face temptations. The temptations of Satan are meant to deceive us, to harm us, to annihilate us. That is to say, with our own hand, we will lead ourselves to our total annihilation. If you receive 3 problems on the path of God, on the path of Satan, you will live in total hell. It's not that you say, I lost my son because I am a believer. No, if I were an unbeliever, I would also receive the same and worse, much worse. Much worse. Because there you do not have the blessing and mercy of God, but rather you have the curse of Satan. So you have 2 options. In none of this, we and more, since there is nothing outside of us that we have directed. And we have given him the freedom to choose between being grateful to God and being ungrateful to God. Here it is. So choose. Choose. You may have that calamity. And by having patience, thinking about it, how can you use this calamity, that calamity for your perfection? I remember once many of those things happened to me. Once I raised chickens. So one day I woke up and went to that yard where I had the chickens. I saw that a large number of the chickens, due to the heat, gathered in one place and all died, escaping from the sun. They all died. So I had to take out large bags filled with the bodies of those chickens that were very expensive. They were decorative chickens, beautiful chickens with special feathers, things like that. So I had to fill bags with carcasses, suffering because my 6 months of work was being lost. I lost all my capital, my effort, everything, all my sacrifice was completely lost. It's like my dad really and truly saw me with that withered, sad face. My dad said to me, "My son, do not be sad." "But Dad, don't you see what has happened to me?" Then my dad said to me, "My son, now you are stronger. Why? Why have you received that calamity?" When a human being faces a calamity, if they can overcome that calamity with patience, it is like a person who receives a virus, an illness. If your body can produce antivirus, then it will strengthen. What the vaccine does is strengthen you against that virus. In other words, this will not break you more in the future. You become stronger, more unbreakable. You will become more unbreakable, stronger, more powerful, a stronger person, because weak people are doomed to ruin themselves, to self-destruct, because one lacks resilience, patience, and continuity, which are keys to success. Then my dad told me, "My son, don't worry, you are going to be a braver man. Now you no longer have fear of what has happened. The important thing is to think about how to overcome it. How to overcome it, then you will become stronger, more unbreakable." That encouraged me so much. I said, I'm going to start from scratch, and that's it. Maybe that's not right. I'm going to start studying, and I have already dedicated myself to studying. But this time I will do my best not to repeat the mistakes of the past. So, dear sister, well, that is very sad what has happened to you, but that does not mean that God has abandoned you. God continues to love you, but you have to fulfill your part, which is to seek knowledge. Start obeying God. Have God as a coach and be patient. Give thanks to God and trust in God. Know that God is the most merciful and that everyone has to leave this world in some way. One with an accident, one with an illness. We all have to die, ending with this narration that is very beautiful. Do you know that to leave this world, all human beings, an angel, and other angels that are employees of that angel are called the angel of death. He comes to take our life away. Each person has their life determined. For example, Sheikh Qomi is going to die in January days, I don't know, of 2023. Let's say that. So, there is a date. That date is a fixed date. No one can change it. There is a fixed date. There is an ajal mualla, which means you can advance it. But that ajal mahtum cannot be postponed. It may be that a person dies early because of sin, like my mother, may peace and blessings be upon him. They passed by a cemetery and said that most of the dead died before their life was completed. They died before because of sin. Well, and some narratives say that many people die from evil eyes. Well, we leave all that aside. This point is important. The archangel of death comes to God. God says, everyone in the world is going to hate me because I am the one in charge of taking life, and people want to continue with that material life. But I have to transfer them to beyond. Those people do not like it, and everyone is going to hate me. God is going to respond, archangel of death. He says, dear angel, do not worry. I am going to put so many causes, diseases, accidents, that, wars, bombs. Let no one realize that death was because of you, and the cause only prepared the ground. So now, when someone dies, we never say, look, their life ended by the will of God, and the archangel of death took them. No one ever says this. Although in Islam we say we are from God and our return is towards God, but we do not say it. What happens? We always talk about material things that we have seen. That one died of cancer, that one died of coronavirus, that one died of a heart attack, that one in an accident, that one from a bomb. But we never focus on the main cause, which is his life is over. His life is over. Then God sent the angel of death, and that person dies. Dear brothers, the best of the best is to surrender ourselves to God, trust in God, and know that God is the best. So what happens to the believer is always the best for the believer. And know that even if you face difficulties, God is just. He will reward you for all the hardships that a believer endures. There is even a narration, it says, on the day of judgment, the believer, when the folder of deeds is brought to him, says, oh look, how many acts of worship I did not perform these prayers, so many things, so many blessings. Why? For works that I have not done, but they have recorded, works that I never even thought of these works. For example, they give you 1,000 pilgrimages to Mecca, but I have never been to Mecca even once, yet you have 1,000 pilgrimages, 2,000 recitations of everything in the Quran. Me, 2,000, yes. But I didn't know Arabic. But here is the reward. God, where do these rewards come from? Then God says to him, my servant, do you remember on such a day that calamity happened to you, and you were pleading with me to remove that calamity, and I did not take it away for your own good? He says, yes, that for example, my mother was sick and died. Yes, and I thought you had abandoned me. God says, no, I had not abandoned you, but that was for the best. That, for example, your mom dies from that illness, that this dies, that dies, that. Then the believer says, yes, do you remember that day you had an accident, you broke your leg and suffered so much? Yes, yes. That reward you are seeing is for the calamities you have received. And now I want to reward you in that way. It is said that the believer becomes so happy and joyful that they say, I wish God would give me more difficulties, more catastrophes, more problems in life. I wish they would destroy me with scissors. I wish they would dismember me with scissors to receive so many rewards. Then God says, don't worry, I am the wisest. I will only give calamity to the extent of each person's patience. And God is wise. He does not give you more than you can bear. So, if you see that God has given you a problem, God is at the same time gifting you the patience for that problem. That power to overcome the problem has already been given to you. Any problem you receive as a believer, know that God is the most merciful, He has given you the power to overcome that problem. So trust in God and rise again and say, "Oh Allah, God, give me strength to overcome this problem, to reach the perfection you seek in me." God bless you. Peace be upon you and the mercy of God. May the peace and blessing of God be with us.